So .NET Core, installing it on a Raspberry Pi isn't all that easy. And in fact, if you have a look at this GIF, whether that's showing you much, but that's a post that I've created on how to install .NET Core on a Raspberry Pi, and there's a fair bit to it. About halfway down that is where we start creating a console app and then a Blazor app. But there's a fair few steps to go through, and I'll just briefly talk about them here. You've got to really start with updating your Pi. If you're going to do anything to anything, then you run these two commands and you'll update your Pi. Then I've done this, but you don't have to, but I've set up a shared directory so that I've got easier access to the files I create on the Pi. After you've done that, we have to download a couple of prerequisites. All of this is detailed on that blog post, so you don't need to worry about what goes into this. Then you download the .NET binaries and the ASP.NET Core binaries, and then you need to be able to put those binaries in a place and then link things together so that your user profile's got access to all of those files. And then you can install the Blazor templates if you want to do a bit of Blazor. And then if you were to reboot your Pi at that point, it would lose those links. So you can edit this .bash file that lives in your user profile to make those links permanent. And then once you've done that, then you've got .NET Core installed. It used to be as hard as having to go through all them steps, but I got annoyed with having to do that. So I actually created an install script. So again, this is in that post that I showed earlier, and I'll share these slides afterwards so you can get to that link. But you can do it in one command now. You can just run that command you can see on the screen, and it will just download and install and do all that linking for you. You won't need to do anything else other than make sure your Pi is up to date. So this just makes that a little bit, less troublesome for people. It's far faster to do. So let's spin a console app up on a Raspberry Pi. So I've got PuTTY and I've dialed into my Raspberry Pi here. So I can close that, we don't need that anymore. So if I pretty much do exactly what I did before in Windows, let's make a directory called console1, and then we'll do .NET-info. If I scroll up here, you'll see I have 3.1.102 running on my Pi. So I've not got a preview running on there, but I'm just 102, which is fine. That'll do pretty much exactly what I want it to do. So if I do a .NET new console, and that's created that. And then here's my shared directory on my Raspberry Pi. So that's just using Samba. And if I go into that directory, I can now open this in code. And we have the exact same code that we had before when it loads. So we have hello world. And likewise, if I do .NET run in here, then, obviously this is running on a Raspberry Pi, so this whole process just takes slightly longer, but it's not too bad. I've actually got a Raspberry Pi 4 running here. So if I flick my camera on, and all being well, you should see there we are, a Raspberry Pi. So you see that, Mert?
Yes.
Good, that's all right then. So
Perfect.
Just here we have a little circuit that I've wired up with a couple of LEDs, a couple of resistors, a button and some wires. And over here I have a Raspberry Pi 4. All of this is a lot faster on a Raspberry Pi 4, probably about 50% faster actually. It's quite a speed increase you get by using a Pi 4. So if you're going to do .NET development, then I'd recommend you do it on a Pi 4, certainly if you're going to do any running and building. So what we can do now is if I switch back to my slides, now we've got a basic console app running on there. Really, we want to do a proper IoT hello world, which is flashing one of those LEDs that you saw on that board. So that's my circuit that I've got there.